say it would hurt businesses and consumers, while supporters argue it could help close the state's $3 billion deficit. The U.S. Department of Education is clarifying that the University of Alabama at Birmingham, not the University of Alabama at Tuscaloosa, is under investigation for DEI policies. UAB says it will cooperate to ensure compliance. And Harvard is making tuition free for families earning up to $200,000, up from $85,000. This move follows other elite schools aiming to maintain diversity after the Supreme Court's ban on race-based admissions. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's now time for Let's Elevate, the Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Filko and Carey Grant.
All right, good evening, New Orleans, on this beautiful Tuesday night here. God, the weather has been unbelievable the last couple of days. Crisp and, let's maybe we could capture it and hold it for about 6 months, because I fear in another few weeks here leading into spring, summer, we're going to be wishing that we had this 60, 70 degree weather. But in any event, gorgeous, gorgeous day. And I am soloing tonight. My good friend and co-host, Carey Grant, has taken the evening off. I think I owe him because he covered for me a couple times over the last few weeks. And I am happy to solo tonight and allow him a night off. Boy, there are so many things going on. It really is hard to keep up with the news. I mean, every hour it seems like something locally or nationally or internationally is happening. Today, if you people didn't get a chance to see it, really some big news out of or relating to Ukraine. There was a call between President Putin of Russia and President Trump. I'll be honest, I think it did not go the way that Trump thought it was going to go. Thought he was going to get a ceasefire, 30 days, and, from all reports, and again, sometimes you never know what is being reported, because in discussions like this, you're not going to reveal every aspect. They were on the phone for apparently 2 hours. And apparently what came out of it was we'll call it a quasi-ceasefire. Russia apparently agreed to 30 days not to attack Ukrainian energy and infrastructure, and also not to attack in the maritime area. Well, let me tell you, somebody that has been following this story very, very closely, Russia has been brutally attacking the energy sector in Ukraine. Every night, missiles and drones attacking, only for one reason: to hurt the Ukrainian people and to keep them, cold, without electricity, and still what is a very cold part of the world. And I think, Putin said something along the lines of, "Oh, no, we never attack infrastructure and energy sector." Well, that's a bunch of, what can I call it on the air? BS. All right. I'm told I could say that. So BS. All right. And here's what I'd like to see happen. I'd like to see President Trump get really pissed off right now at Putin, because Trump really does, in my opinion, I do believe sincerely that he wants the killing to stop. Okay. And, Ukraine has said, we'll stop. We're in 30 days, no fighting. We're totally in. And I think what Putin showed today was he's not totally in, and he's not willing to just stop all the fighting right now. And I think the only way you're ever going to get him to stop to the fighting and get him to a negotiation table, which is the only way that this situation can be resolved, is through diplomacy. The only way you're going to get him to the table in a meaningful, fair way is to have leverage and give the Ukrainians what's needed here so that they can continue to show some success on the battlefield. It doesn't have to be forever. It's not going to be months and months and months or years, but weeks, okay? Let Ukraine show, through help from the U.S., help from the Europeans, that they're negotiating from strength. And then you will see Putin come to the table. Russia has lost, I have heard through experts, more than 600,000 men and women in this war. 600,000. And I think Putin does want an out. I think he's looking for a ramp where he can get out of this, but he's only going to do that when he feels that that he's got to be fair in a negotiation. So we'll get back to Ukraine in just a second. I see Mr. Elmore on the line. How are you tonight?
Yes, sir. How you doing today?
I am good. Hope you had a good weekend and having a good start of the week here.
Yes, sir. In terms of Ukraine, and I'm gonna say what I basically think. I think with Putin, you're not looking at someone that has a rational diplomatic viewpoint of the world like me and you see it. One, he's not gonna give up none of that land. Second, he don't want no peacekeeping force, European or NATO, on Ukraine's territory. So really, I mean, to me, it's games, man. I mean, I don't envision him wanting to have any peace because not only does he want that land he got, he ain't gonna give it up.
Yep.
He's not gonna allow any peacekeeping force, European or NATO, to be on that land. So I think we're kind of naive, Ernie, just to think that this man gonna think rational like me and you think.
Well, first of all, you hit it right on the head. He does not want to give up any of the 20% of Ukrainian land that he has seized. He doesn't want to give up the Crimea, which is the area he seized in 2014. He certainly doesn't want NATO membership for Ukraine, and he doesn't want the Europeans within Ukraine. All right, those are the conditions he's put on. And at the end of the day, what he wants is he wants to go back to the Soviet Union. He wants Russia to be a meaningful player and to have Ukraine part of Russia. And I think eventually, if he got his I don't think he's going to get there, but if he had his ability, I think he'd love to see Poland and Romania and a lot of these other East European countries part of his empire. But here's the way, as I said, that I think you could combat that. And again, the Europeans can't do this alone. Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, they're wonderful people. They're trying to help Ukraine, but the Europeans don't have, the strength to change this. But the United States does. And if Trump will ever come to the point that Putin is not a good guy, he's not a friend of America, and say, you know what? I gave you the opportunity to have peace. I gave you the opportunity to see a ceasefire. You rejected it. I have no other alternative, Mr. Putin, other than to support the Ukrainians even more than what Biden did. If he would do that, and it's a big if, I understand. I'm being naive here. But if he would do that, then you would get Putin to the table and we can resolve this conflict in a fair way as opposed to just a capitulation by the Ukrainians.
Well, I think, look, now put your thinking cap on because it's not for off. Now, when you think about Eastern Europe and when you think about the domination Russia had on Eastern Europe, the only reason why Russia had a little smartness, forgive me for saying they were smart, they weren't stupid because they were filing for bankruptcy. They had no money. They couldn't continue to occupy all of Eastern Europe. They didn't have no money. And they fighting for survival. That's the only reason why they gave it up. But they had a bit. But Putin, to me, he's looking at like Peter the Great. You ain't Peter the Great. First and foremost,
yeah.
What you lost, you ain't gonna get back. Don't laugh. What you lost, you ain't gonna get back. Okay. Eastern Europe wants to be free. Okay. People have a little taste of freedom. Secondly, what Europe needs to do, United States to do, stop playing the games. You can really strangle them a little more than what you're doing financially. We don't have to go to war behind that. You can strangle them to the point where you're going to have to come to the peace table, brother. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Well,
I mean, we don't need to go to war behind it, but
No, I don't think we should go to war. I don't think we're looking at war with American, men and women. But I do think, I don't know that the economic sanctions are effective enough. We've put a lot of economic sanctions on Russia, and they're still surviving, okay? I think it's got to be a combination of more economic sanctions than what we have right now and, aiding Ukraine militarily through the weaponry that we've been giving them now for 3 years. look, I've been to Ukraine 4 times since the war started. It is very scary because sirens go off. They don't have a missile system that protects all of the cities. And, they're at a disadvantage. Ukrainians are at a disadvantage because of that. I think if we give them the strength to survive this for another month or two and see some wins on the battlefield, I think Ukraine and Russia will come to a negotiation table, and there will be peace. I think that's the only way we're going to get peace here, because if you leave it in Putin's hands, he really doesn't want peace right now. I mean, he feels he's winning, and he wants to just keep going. But let's do this. I got another caller, Mr. Elmore. Call back tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more of this. We'll have more time tomorrow because I've got a guest coming on in a couple minutes. And again, this conflict is not ending tonight, unfortunately. So we'll have a lot more opportunity to talk about it. And I really appreciate your call. I think I have Pamela on the air. Is that Pamela?
Yes.
Good evening. Hi. How are you?
Good evening. Is this Arnie?
It is. This is Arnie Filko. I am co-host of Elevated Conversations here on WBOK.
Well, hey, Arnie. I'm a regular caller on WBOK. It's nice to talk to you, Mr. Philco.
It's very nice. Arnie, please. It's very nice to talk to you.
Okay, I'll call you Arnie.
Yeah, please,
but, baby,
please.
I'm going to tell you one thing.
Okay.
The way I feel about this, you can forget about Trump, dude making his brother mad. Because I feel Trump and Putin are brothers. You can forget about even if he wanted to pretend like he was mad, always looking like he got a hard poop coming on. I'm gonna tell you one thing: he's not gonna give. He's not gonna give any more weapons. I don't believe that to Ukraine. He's not gonna do it.
Well, let me say this: in the odds. You're more than likely right. There is an unholy alliance between Trump and Putin that has existed for many years. I don't know. There was speculation that there was some video from Moscow from years ago. I don't know if that's true or not. But I have to tell you, Pamela, it's really sad. I've come to know a lot of the Ukrainian people. We had 2 Ukrainian people in our studio here last Thursday. We spent the weekend with them. They are really unbelievably courageous, wonderful people. And, Putin and Russia invaded their country twice now.
Right.
It is a shame. It's a real shame for America that we could have a foreign policy where we would desert a Democratic ally, get in bed with a communist brutal dictator, a war criminal.
Dictator. Right.
I mean, just, we've come so far in 40 days here. Honestly, we've come so far, it's sickening.
And let me tell you something. See, I have to be careful because I'm getting a little on the peed off side. So I will be careful and I will not curse. But I'm going to tell you something. They are working together, and Trump is going to say his lies like he does every time he opens his mouth, and he's going to be right there at Putin's, and that's how it's going to be. Can't we all see what's going on? This is for real. This is for real. They are in cahoots together. They're boo-coons. I'm telling you.
No, Pamela, you're not wrong. I mean, you've hit it right on the head here, and and it's not just Trump. Also, I will say, it's our vice president, who in my mind is even more dangerous than Trump because he's smarter. Okay, it's a guy like
and what's dude's name? Neon. What's that other dude's name?
The vice president?
That stands by him and lets his son curse at him. The Tesla dude.
Oh, Elon Musk. Yeah. No, it's Elon Musk. It's a guy, Tucker Carlson, if you remember him from Fox News.
I remember.
I mean, these are isolationists. These are people that feel the world is a different place. And it's hard to believe that 80 years of freedom and democracy of the United States in literally 6 weeks is going down the drain. And, Pamela, one more topic I want to cover with you because it relates to that. And we have another caller, so I'm going to try to abbreviate this. But, all in the news the last couple of days also, you saw that we took, I don't know how many, a number of Venezuelan prisoners, and we put them on an airplane. How they were treated. And we sent them to El Salvador. And look, these are not great guys. Nobody's standing up and shouting and yelling on their behalf. But when does it come a point where in the United States of America that we could, without due process and invoking some law from 100 years ago, we could be taking people on an airplane, taking them out of our country, and saying goodbye.
And you haven't even taken them through the system, though.
Exactly.
Are they really all that? And how you treating people? That breaks my heart to see that.
Exactly.
They're human beings just like us. Find out first. Go through what you're supposed to go through, and clear the ones that need to go back, and leave the ones that ain't don't have any doggone things on their record. Leave them alone.
Absolutely. Listen, we need to
I
preserve. No, thank you. We need to look. It's not about the people. You almost have to take the people aside and talk simply about democracy. If we don't protect democracy, then who is? Okay, because if it may be one group today, tomorrow it'll be another group the next day. That isn't what our country.
And guess what? You're not gonna make me leave my country, bruh. No. How about that one? Take that and see how much you can buy with it. I refuse.
You and I both, refuse. Pamela. Listen, I gotta run to take a quick call before break. Call again, okay? Call again for the show. We'd love to talk to you.
All right.
Thank you. Coleman, how are you?
Yes, how you doing?
I am good. Hope your evening's going well.
I'm going to call you Arnie. We go way back. You was on the city council out in the transportation business.
Oh, we do. Yes. How are you doing? It's been a while.
I like to claim as well for old man, pushing and shoving, trying to make things happen.
Good to hear from you.
I'm going to be kind of quick, fast, in a hurry.
Okay.
Trump need a victory more than he need Russia. They need Putin. Because he said he could end the war tomorrow, and right now he don't have European support. He don't have support from our neighbors, and he is one of those guys. He want to show you who he is, and I'm willing to bet Ukraine gonna get the weapons they need so that he could get credit for ending the war. The European nation and the Middle East, all of them need some peace because you really don't want war to be going on. We got enough conflicts as it is. Israel trying to pull America into the other war that Israel is trying to start, and we don't have enough resources to just, get in all these different conflicts. We should have learned from Vietnam, Afghanistan. We just been in too many wars. And I can tell you, America got a whole stockpile of weapons to use because they make them every year. So Ukraine not getting nothing new, but they sure could have more to intimidate Russia to the point that Putin can't win because they're willing to do what the Vietnam did. They die for their country and take as many people with them they can. So that's my comment on that. And the president cannot start a war according to the Constitution without Congress approving it. And then the president gives the Secretary of Defense marching orders.
Yes,
so that's
sir.
all I wanted to say.
No,
but he don't, go with Constitution law. He want to be the the king of America.
Yes.
And America don't want no king.
No.
So he's making a lot of the politicians angry with him, and at some point it's coming to the head because the judges are already saying, what he needs to do, and the judges doesn't matter. So the executive branch does not rule over the legislative branch.
Well, Mr. Coleman, we still fortunately have something called separation of powers here. But I'm wondering when our members of Congress, especially our Republican members of Congress, are going to get their voice and start speaking up, because they've been pretty meek now for 2 months while the
they've been too
world is
quiet.
going to heck here.
The midterm election, we got 3 people coming up. So hopefully we get 3 Democrats, and then if we can hold out for the next election, the Democrats be in better position.
Yes,
but
yes.
they got to show fight. They're not showing enough fight.
Yep.
And 10 of them went along with the budget that they passed. If you don't like something, we need to fight, because they would have voted on it again if they made some amendments to that budget. But the Democrats is in trouble.
They got to. Hey, Mr. Coleman, before we quit, really, I just want to say thank you for all you've done over these years. I do remember all the work you do within the taxi cab business, and we really appreciate it in New Orleans. Don't be a stranger. Call the show again.
All right, sir. Thank you, and God bless you.
You're welcome. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to shift topic a little bit, and with a really interesting guest. Be back in a minute.
Hey everybody, it's Graylin Bryant Banks.
And Kimber White Dupree.
From the front porch, y'all. You know how we do. Every Monday is Moving Monday.
And Tuesday is Trivia Tuesday.
And y'all know we have nothing but bad cheering coming through here on Wednesday.
But stick with us. On Thursday, we travel.
That's right. And Friday's Free Your Mind Friday, so get your brass up.
Something on your mind? Want to get it off your chest?
Holla at your people. WBOK 1230 AM, the station you listen to.
All day long.
WBOK 1230 AM, online at WBOK1230.com. The Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Philco and Carey Grant.
All right, good evening, everyone. Back again here. I'm soloing tonight. This is Arnie Philco. My good friend and co-host Carey Grant is taking the night off, but he will be back tomorrow. We'll probably both be in studio. We're going to... really appreciate the callers and appreciate the discussion relative to Ukraine and our foreign policy. There's, again, so many topics I want to get into. We'll get into them maybe later in the show, certainly tomorrow and Thursday. But I want to shift a little bit tonight, maybe a little lighter topic, definitely a lighter topic than what we're seeing in Russia and Ukraine. But as some of you may know, in fact, it should be starting about right now. The NCAA basketball tournament is starting out tonight, and tomorrow are what they call the play-in games. These are teams to get into the regular big field. They're all part of the tournament. North Carolina will be playing tonight against San Diego State. That's probably the marquee game. But Thursday, it really starts, in a big way. Thursday at 11 o'clock, first round games. And, I can't tell you, I'm so excited for this. The number of people in our country that fill out ballots is enormous. And we all have our favorites. People are going to hear this the next 3 weeks. I know my guest here in a second, is not going to cheer for this, but I'm going to be cheering for the red and white of the Wisconsin Badgers and the number 3 seed. And, if they get far, they're actually going to play the favorite team of my guest. So let me introduce Mr. Dr. Gabe Feldman. Gabe, are you there?
I am here.
You are, and I know that you're not cheering for my Wisconsin Badgers. I'm sure you're cheering for blue and white, right? And that's the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, I know it's not a popular choice unless you went to Duke or have a family member from there, but I am a triple Dookie, so I do, in fact, root for Duke. Of course, I wish I could be rooting for the olive and blue, but Tulane got a couple of bad calls at the end of their game over the weekend, so they haven't made it. But
they
did.
Always
next year.
That was a horrendous last 25 seconds of that game. They should have beat Memphis. And, would have put themselves in a position to win one more game to go to the tournament. So, just terrible roughing. But Tulane did make it to this new tournament, which is exciting. They're going out to Vegas in a couple weeks in what do they call the Crown Invitational. and I think they're playing USC, I believe, in the first round. So that's a great kudos to the Tulane program for being in postseason play.
There we go. Good job, Ron Hunter. Good luck with the postseason run.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Feldman. Gabe is a good friend. We've worked together on a number of things. Gabe, before we start, I want to talk a little bit about intercollegiate athletics, since this is a great timing given the tournament. But talk a little bit about what you do, both at the Tulane Law School and the sports law program. You run a phenomenal program called the Center for Sport. And you are of all. I mean, I'm saying this. I won't put Gabe on the spot for this. Gabe is probably the most well-known and well-versed legal expert in sports of any person in the country, and we're really blessed to have him here in New Orleans. But talk a little bit about your role with the law school, the center, and just kind of your background a little bit.
Sure. Well, thank you, Arnie. Thank you for having me on. It is great to be with you. And as you mentioned, I am a professor at Tulane Law School, and I run our sports law program, which is the oldest sports law program in the country. And we have the biggest program in the country, and I think, in my unbiased opinion, not only the best, but we are regularly producing alum who then go on to get great jobs in the sports industry. And Arnie, I know that you can speak from personal family experience because one of your sons is one of our sports law alum who has a great job in the sports industry. And then I also am the co-director of the Tulane Center for Sport, which is an effort to bring together all different departments on Tulane's campus, not only law, but medicine, business, architecture, social work, to do a 360 approach to the sports industry. A lot of schools have sports management programs, some have sports medicine, a few have sports law, but nobody has brought them all together to give students an opportunity to approach sports from lots of different angles and lots of different fields, and for us all to collaborate on research and teaching and everything else. So that's been a great program. And then I also oversee our NCAA compliance office within Tulane. So all of the NCAA issues that our school deals with, our compliance folks report up to me to help us navigate the very murky waters of college sports.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's a very challenging position that you hold there, relative to compliance and infractions. I want to go back just a little bit about the law school, because I knew your predecessor, a guy named Gary Roberts, who did Gary start the sports law program, or was there somebody before him?
He did. Gary did start it, yep.
And Gary did a tremendous job. Like you, he was somebody that media from around the country would reach out to for commentary and expertise. And how did you come about succeeding Gary, Gabe? Where did you come from before coming to New Orleans?
I was practicing law at a big law firm in Washington, D.C., where the reason I went to the law firm is because they had a sports law practice. So I was doing about 50% sports litigation and then 50% just general commercial litigation. And I was teaching as an adjunct, and I loved the teaching. The practice of law was a little tough. I learned a lot. I'm glad I did it. But I decided I wanted to start teaching full time, and I wanted to teach sports law. So the only place to really go was Tulane. And I had known Gary a little bit, got to know him better, and then he brought me in to help him build the program. And now, many years later, I have been running the program since about 2008.
Wow. It's hard to believe that it's been that long already. Well, you have done an amazing job. And the Center for Sport, what I find interesting is you brought together all of these disciplines, law, medicine, business. What was the thought process behind that? Why? Because it really was. It was and is, I think, rather unique.
Yeah, the thought process was, you might remember around 2010, the NFL was in a protracted lockout. And there were a lot of legal issues about whether the players would get back on the field. But one of the big issues they were talking about was how to better protect, and something near and dear to your heart, former athletes' health, and make sure that they were taken care of, not only while they were playing, but then long after they were playing. And I realized that we had somebody on campus who was spending a lot of time working on athlete health and safety and who's really one of the leaders in the country, and that's Dr. Greg Stewart. And we were sort of working in the same space but didn't realize it. And we got together and said, wait a minute, why don't we come together to offer something that nobody else can? And it really started with a combination of law and medicine. And we made a pitch to the NFL and the NFL Players Association that we could help and we could offer something that nobody else could offer, which is not only help with the physical or mental issues, but also legal issues, financial issues, and really bring a one-stop shop to the NFL and the NFL Players Association. And so we went up to New York, pitched it to the Players Association, eventually got a partnership with both the NFL and the NFL Players Association, which continues today. But that was really the genesis of it when NFL football had stopped. And so people were kind of panicked about when the game would start again. I was focused on the legal issues. My colleague was focused on medical issues. And we said, wouldn't it be better if we started working together?
That's a brilliant idea. The NFL has, really led the way in so many ways for, former player health and to have Dr. Stewart and Tulane involved and the center involved is great. I'm going to do a shameless plug since I got you, and also I got the microphone tonight. But the one really significant program that you do with the center is called the Starting Block. And you and I know this program real well. Why don't you kind of describe it? Because I think a lot of our listeners, are parents and grandparents, and I think their sons and daughters would probably love to hear about this program.
Well, Arnie, I'm going to turn it back to you because you're the inspiration for it, and this is your, you created it with your passion. So you tell us the genesis of it.
I'll do it quickly.
And then I'll tell a little bit about what it is.
All right. So the Starting Block started about 4 or 5 years ago, and it originated with really the death of an icon in New Orleans, Leah Chase. Leah, who, as everybody knows, ran Dookie Chase. Leah was one of my dearest friends. We used to, and I found out, by the way, as we did the memorial for her when she passed away, she had many, many great friends, okay? But all of us ended up in her kitchen watching her chop potatoes and onions and things like that. And over that, we would talk about life. And we would, her and I had some incredible conversations about New Orleans and religion and race and sports. And one of the dearest people I've ever met in my life. And when she passed, I went to her family, Dookie, her son, who unfortunately has also passed now, and Stella, her daughter. And I said, we need to put a program together to honor Leah's life and combine some of our joint interest. And with the help of another family, Morris and Melinda Mintz, we put together this program called the Starting Block. And under the program, every 2 years, we accept roughly 50 high school students from the greater New Orleans area. We put them through an 18-month curriculum to learn about the ins and outs of the sports industry. And while they're doing that, they're also learning about off-the-court things, the ethics of sports, the history of their culture. Again, we kind of focus on African-American, Hispanic, and Jewish, and we bring in expert speakers each class to talk about tradition and history. And at the end of the 18 months, two things happen. First of all, maybe the least important thing is they know a lot about sports, and if they want to pursue it as a career, they can go on to college, pursue a sport management degree, and really have a leg up as a career in sports. And the other amazing thing, which I think is even more important, is these kids bond together and they learn about each other. They ask questions, and these are kids that may not otherwise really know each other, may not ever, really be associated with each other. This program allows them to do that. And so, Gabe, you and your team have done an incredible job, especially on the sport education piece of it. And I'm just, what are your sentiments after kind of 4 years now, going through the program?
Yeah, I think my overriding sentiment is that when you first told me about the idea, 4 or 5 years ago, I thought it was a wonderful idea, and now I think it is an essential idea. I think in some ways, sports are, relatively speaking, not that important, but there is, and you and I have talked a lot about this, no more unifying force in the world than sports. And we are at a time now, more than ever, that we need to be unified. And to have an opportunity to bring students together from different backgrounds, different cultures, different religions, different beliefs, and be able to talk about sports and not only put aside differences, but be able to come together, learn from each other. And the hope is that, as you said, not only do we educate them about possible careers in the sports industry, but much more importantly is we hope we can bring people together. And at a time where there's so much unrest and so much disagreement, I think it's just a beautiful thing. And I know you've spent much of your life working on bringing people together and finding common threads. And again, there is no more basic and I think substantial common thread for many people in their lives than sports. So it's been a beautiful program. We look forward to continuing it and continuing to build it. And as I know you've talked about, as being a potential model for all across the country, because we need something. We need something to bridge our differences. And this has been a great example of what can happen.
No, given the world we live in right now, we absolutely need something. And the unity that sports brings us, it's so important. And just for everybody listening, if you have a son or daughter that is in high school, freshman through junior year, because it's a 2-year program, so we can't take seniors. But we will be opening the program up to the new class starting in the fall and recruiting the class this spring and summer. So if you have a son or daughter interested in the Starting Block program, please get a hold of me. You can call WBOK, and they can put you in touch with me. And, we would love to talk to you about it. So, Gabe, I want to shift a little bit. Intercollegiate athletics especially is going through incredible change right now, and about to start really a significant reform. Let's talk a little bit about, and again, this is very complex. I'm going to tell people we could spend 2 hours on this, but I'm going to try to have Gabe break it down. Talk a little bit about what the House settlement is. And I don't mean House settlement. That's the name of a plaintiff, actually. Talk about the House settlement, what that means as it relates to name, image, and likeness, and what it relates to how it impacts college sports going forward. And then I'm gonna kind of, we'll bring it back with some specific questions.
Sure. And so let me go big picture. And then, as you said, we can talk about specifics. But I think what's important for people to understand is just a touch of background is that for decades, nearly a century, the NCAA defined college sports as really being about two things. One is that the people playing the games were students, and two, they were not paid to play. And that was important, according to the NCAA, for multiple reasons. One being it allowed the students to focus on academics, and two, it differentiated college sports from pro sports, where the athletes in the pro level are not students and they are getting paid. And so the NCAA had a series of restrictions for a very long time that prohibited college athletes from receiving anything beyond essentially their scholarship. And you might remember some of the more infamous stories where college athletes were allowed to have bagels provided by their coaches in their athletic department, but they were not allowed to have cream cheese on the bagel. That was the no spread rule because the cream cheese was seen as an improper benefit. And there were all sorts of crazy stories and things that the NCAA did to try to maintain this distinction between college and pro sports. And over the last 10 years or so, as college sports has grown into a multi-billion-dollar business, there was a feeling that this seems unfair that coaches are getting $9, $10, $11, $12 million a year. We have these incredible facilities, but the athletes themselves aren't making any more than they were 50 years ago. They were still getting their athletic scholarship, which is massive. Not to suggest that is not worth a lot, but as salaries continue to go up everywhere, there's a feeling that maybe college athletes should get more, and they should get more in terms of protecting their health and safety, but also the question was raised, why shouldn't college athletes be able to earn money from the use of their name, image, and likeness, which in every other walk of life we refer to as an endorsement deal or a social media appearance. College athletes were not allowed to do that. So through a series of lawsuits and state laws, we are at this point in time now where if this settlement gets approved, a few things will happen. One is college athletes will get a lot of money in damages, up to $2.8 billion in damages with a B. And then going forward, schools will be allowed to pay the athletes directly up to $20.5 million a year. And college athletes will be able to earn money for the use of their name, image, and likeness. So whether that's in a Nike commercial or doing a car dealership appearance or signing autographs, athletes can do that now, can make money off of their NIL. But the big change is going to be that the schools themselves can pay the athletes directly, again, up to $20.5 million a year. So it will be the biggest change in college sports, I think, in all of our lifetimes.
And Gabe, where is that case? I know schools, tell me if I'm wrong here, but schools had the ability to either opt into the settlement or opt out. Is that right?
Yeah, so the Power 5 conferences, it's now just the Power 4, but at the time of the lawsuit, it was the Power 5. They're automatically in, but for every other school, including a school like Tulane, they had the choice to either opt in to the settlement and pay up to that $20.5 million or opt out and not pay anything at all. The other thing that the settlement does, and why the opt-in, opt-out matters to a lot of schools, is that it also eliminated the scholarship limits that we've had for decades and instead put in roster limits. And so every athlete on the team now can receive a full scholarship. Before, for example, in baseball, they were limited to 11.7 scholarships, and you might have 30 guys on your roster. There is now going to be a specific roster limit, but everyone on your baseball team can get a full ride. And so if you opt in, you are subject to those subject to those roster limits, but you're allowed to share revenue with your athletes. If you opt out, you don't have those roster limits, but you're not allowed to share revenue with your athletes.
I see.
So schools are making those decisions now.
What percentage of Division I schools opted into this agreement?
We don't have a final count yet, but the overwhelming majority are opting in. There is one notable conference that has opted out, and that's the Ivy League. They don't offer athletic scholarships to begin with, so they weren't about to start paying millions of dollars to their athletes. But most certainly at the Group of 5 level, most conferences and most schools are opting in.
Understand. And I guess, from a recruiting standpoint, and I mean, it would be difficult to be a conference out there, Division I, that doesn't come into the settlement. So let me break it down a little bit. Let me try to its very basic stuff. So first of all, former players in these sports are eligible for some of the settlement money, correct?
Correct. If you played from 2016 to present day, depending on how much you played and what sport, you will get a piece of that $2.8 billion in damages.
And it's for what sports for former players?
All sports. Anyone who is on scholarship. So if you were the star quarterback on the football team, you're going to get more than if you were the backup, whatever position you might have on the lacrosse team. But they are all eligible to receive. They all receive, even for some it'll be a tiny sliver, but they all can get some money from these damages award. Okay.
Gabe, can you hold on for one more segment here? We're going to take
Sure.
We're going to take a quick break. We'd love to hear from you, by the way. 504-582-9422. This is not easy stuff. These are, fairly technical rules and regulations. But Dr. Feldman is breaking it down in a way we can all understand it. Be back in just a minute.
Hey, this is Dave Poston. Be sure to listen to WBOK 1230 AM every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. and Sunday evening at 5 p.m., bringing you the best Southern Soul barroom music with the Southern Soul Weekend Party Mix, hosted by me, of course. I'll be playing your favorite Southern Soul music by artists from all over the South, right here on WBOK 1230 AM or online at WBOK1230.com. The station you listen to longer. Listen to longer. Listen to longer.
If someone asks,
yeah,
let them know you listen to WBOK 1230 AM.
The Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Philco and Carey Grant.
All right, we are back, and Talking tonight, college sports, given that we are about to start, I think, one of the greatest sports 3 weeks of the year, the NCAA basketball tournament. But, be below the tournament, outside of what's happening on the court, there's a lot happening off the court. And tonight we have Dr. Gabe Feldman, who runs the sports law program at Tulane, to help us break it down. So, Gabe, so my question I had before was about kind of the former players. Are the retired players organizations, and I headed up basketball, but NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, are they actively informing and educating their membership about the rights that the players might have?
They are to an extent, but most of the retired guys, so if you played before 2016, you're not eligible for the damages award because the statute of limitations only provides a remedy for people who played within the last essentially 8 years. So those older guys aren't eligible. Now, some of them have brought their own lawsuits to try to get a piece of it.
Right.
But it's been really mostly the plaintiffs' lawyers reaching out to players who may be eligible. But again, that's a relatively small percentage of the overall retired athletes.
Understand. All right, so for current players, the amount for next year, the first year, is $20.5 million, and that's not a fixed amount. That's going to increase every year, right?
Correct, and that's based on 22% of a defined set of revenue, so television revenue, ticket sales. That's where that $20.5 million comes from.
So it's they kind of patterned it off of salary cap in a lot of ways of the professional leagues based upon revenue that they earn at the professional level.
Exactly.
All right. So I think where some of the confusion comes in is how does that 20.5, which universities can pay directly to players, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, how does that intersect with NIL money? Is that the substitute for NIL money, or does NIL money come on top of that for potential player deals?
Well, both. So what they're really trying to do, and you just mentioned it with the rev share, that they're trying to create a system that is similar to professional sports, where other than baseball, our major professional sports leagues in the U.S., athletes obviously get paid directly by their team, but there's a cap. And athletes are also able to do name, image, and likeness deals, can do endorsement deals, sponsorship deals, but those have to be legitimate deals. And as you know, every CBA has a provision that says you can't use an NIL deal to try to circumvent the salary cap. So you can't have the owner of the Dallas Cowboys say, I know I can only pay Dak Prescott $7 million a year, but I'm going to give him a $10 million NIL deal.
That's right.
Clearly against the rules of the NFL and all the pro sports leagues. That's what the NCAA is trying to do. And part of what they're trying to fix is the system we've had in place the last 3 years, where boosters and groups of boosters called collectives are funneling millions of dollars to athletes, calling it NIL, but it's really just an inducement to go to that school. And so the NCAA is trying to eliminate that and have the money come directly from the schools, but still allow athletes to do NIL deals. But just like in the pro leagues, it has to be a legitimate NIL deal. So they will get their quote-unquote salary from the school and then have the ability to do their own NIL deals, but as long as they are legitimate NIL deals.
All right, so let me try to break both of those down. So first of all, for the NIL deals, the deals over and above what the schools are going to pay them, as I understand it, it has to basically be a reasonable, fair market, commensurate with who you are type of deal. And there's going to be an accounting firm nationally that runs a clearinghouse to approve all of those deals, right?
Right. So Deloitte has been hired to come in and look at all the deals, every deal that's over $600, and say that is either a real deal because it is commensurate with fair market value and allow it, or they would say, no, that is so out of whack with what the market would pay that we're going to reject the deal and not allow the athlete to be paid for it.
And what happens if they disagree? Is there an appeals process for that athlete?
Yes. There is an appeal that would go to a neutral arbitrator to make a final determination. And then the sort of billion-dollar question is, what if the arbitrator still rejects the deal? Will an athlete try to sue? Will the company or the entity that's trying to pay the athlete, will they sue? That's an open question, because in the pro leagues, when the league might, and it doesn't happen very often, but it has happened sometimes where the league says, no, we're going to punish the team and the player for trying to do a deal under the table to get around the cap. Any lawsuit there is covered by the collective bargaining agreement, but not to get too far in the weeds, but there is no collective bargaining agreement in college sports. There is no union. There is no players association. They're not employees. So it's unclear what will happen if they try to limit how much the athletes are being paid at the college level.
I see. On the $20.5 million, now that's the money that the universities will pay directly to players. How is that at most universities? I know it's case by case, but relative to the different sports, how is most of that money being divvied up?
So two things. One is that $20.5 million is the cap. Schools are allowed to pay up to that. They don't have to. Schools in the Power Four are pretty much all going to pay the full 20.5. Some of the lower resource schools are going to pay a fraction of that. Some might not pay at all. But regardless of whether they're paying the full 20.5 or paying a smaller amount, most schools that have big-time football, that are in FBS football, are going to spend about 70 to 75% of that money on football players. And then so about 14 million of that will go to football players, and then about 3 to 5 will go to men's basketball players, and then maybe 1 will go to women's basketball players, and the rest will be divided up amongst the various sports. Now, obviously, that could differ if it's a school in the Northeast that has a hockey team. They want to pay their hockey players more, but in general, that's the percentage we're seeing from most schools.
And we can relay this because there's a Tulane Duke connection here. The Tulane quarterback went into the portal and transferred to Duke, and he's getting $8 million? Is that right?
Yeah, that's the reported number. It's hard to tell because those numbers are often inflated and they're often provided by the agent. And agents are great, but they are trying to put the biggest number out there possible. But that's under the old system, right? That won't be permitted if this settlement is approved, because that $8 million. If they do pay $8 million, that's going to go towards that 20.5, and so they'd only have 12.5 million left. Mm-hmm. But they're really calling that a sort of an NIL deal. But that type of NIL deal wouldn't be permitted unless you could show that he's a great quarterback, but unless you can show that that's how much he would get on the open market for the use of his NIL. And most NFL quarterbacks don't get that type of NIL deal.
Right. Are some of the schools, before this settlement goes into effect, are some of them trying to front load this with large NIL deals right now so that maybe they could save off of the 20.5 in the first year next year?
See, this is why you were such a good sports executive. That's exactly what they're doing. They are trying to figure out, all right, we're not subject to these new restrictions yet, so we go out and front load these deals, try to get guys signed up, whether it's for the next few years or just for a year if it's basketball. Yes, we are seeing a lot of that going on where they are sort of emptying their pockets, probably more than their pockets, but they're spending a lot of money on these athletes this year because they know they're going to be restricted in the following years.
Yeah, and for everybody that loves sports, I'm not a huge fan of the transfer portal. I guess it has a lot of problems to it. But next Monday, I believe, basketball transfer portal opens up. So people are going to watch the tournament this weekend, but the big day may be next Monday to see where players on these teams are going to. Gabe, a few more questions. And again, thank you for doing this because this is hard stuff to understand for most people, including myself. Title IX has been such a tremendous benefit to women's athletics. And obviously the women are not getting anywhere near the amount of money that the major men's revenue sports are. What does this do to women's athletics and opportunities for female student athletes?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's a bigger issue with Title IX. And I heard you before I got on talking a little bit about the political issues that we don't know if Title IX is going to survive the current administration. We certainly don't know if it's going to survive in its current form. So we may be looking at massive changes, not only with college athletics, but also just in educational opportunities overall. But under the current Title IX world, if we just freeze time, then there's a very large question about whether that $20.5 million we've been talking about, whether that would be subject to Title IX at all. And if it is, then that 20.5 would have to essentially be split between male and female athletes. Schools are not approaching it that way, which will likely lead to a bunch of different lawsuits. But the hope is, as we've seen with college basketball for the women's side, for volleyball, for softball, we're seeing such massive growth for women's sports that they're going to stand on their own and they're going to continue to be popular. And when schools have a choice in what to invest in, I think the hope is, and I don't think we're too far off from this, that they will choose, not because they're required to, but they will choose to spend money on women's sports because it's a good investment. It's because what people want to watch and what people want to play.
Absolutely.
So we're not quite there yet, but I think we're getting closer to it. And I think more than the House settlement, I just think what our government does is potentially have a bigger impact. But I mean, the trajectory for women's sports is just it's wonderful, both at the collegiate level and the professional level. So I know that most schools are really committed to continuing that growth, but that remains to be seen of what obstacles get put in the way by the government.
Yeah, and somewhat related to that is the issue of walk-ons, because if I think, now that there's going to be roster limits, what does that do for the 100th person on a football team, or the walk-on that made a tryout and played D1 basketball? I guess they're pretty much out here, right?
They get squeezed. Yeah, they get squeezed. I mean, they're definitely, as you shift more money to football and men's and women's basketball, and the not only the revenue-producing sports, but what you could call the revenue-producing athletes, it's the sports and the athletes on the other end of the spectrum that get squeezed out a bit.
Yeah.
And Title IX right now prevents the women's sports from being cut, but we will likely see, and we've already started to see it, is that schools spend a lot less money on their men's Olympic sports. And what the schools have done, instead of cutting sports, which is what they've done in the past, they are gutting sports. And so they're creating multiple tiers. Tier 1, they're going to be spending most of their money, and that's football, men's and women's basketball. Tier 2 is going to be whatever they prioritize next. And then Tier 3, they're not going to cut the sport, but they're going to basically treat it as one step up from club sports, which is still great athletic opportunities, but it's going to be treated very differently than they're treating football and men's and women's basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is fascinating stuff, really important stuff. It's evolving. It's coming into effect next year. So, people should watch this as they watch sports in general. Gabe, we'll get you on another time, because we could spend a whole show on amateurism and how that has kind of gone by the wayside in a lot of ways, and also the issues in pro sports. I mean, it's not only college sports that has some very interesting legal stuff. But in the meantime, I thank you for being with us. I wish you a lot of luck for the first 3 rounds, and it'd be my dream for Badgers and Duke to play once again in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four, because you the greatest moment of my life was when Wisconsin made it to the championship game about a decade ago, and the lowest moment was losing to Duke that night. So
I remember it well.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Let's do a friendly wager. If Duke and Wisconsin do meet each other, and Duke wins, you'll wear a Duke hat, and if Wisconsin wins, I'll wear the Wisconsin.
You got it. That is a deal on WBOK. All right. Hey, thank you, Gabe. And to everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be back as usual tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Carey will be back with me. We got a lot. We're going to talk a little bit about the mayor's race tomorrow to lead it off, and a lot of other topics. Everybody have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.